From where you're kneeling must seem like an 18-carat run of bad luck. Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
Video games are a serious business, netting over $200 billion a year between different platforms, publishers, and developers. New games are released every single day, and because of that, not every game is going to make it. Sometimes, you get a game like Five Nights at Freddy's that's made by a single person with a budget of only $300 after counting the programs that he already had, which has gone on to sell over 30 million copies across all of its games. Five Nights at Freddy's was an outlier that most devs could only dream of. But if FNAF was a dream, then Concord is a waking nightmare that's currently haunting Sony executives. And if I was going to guess, the entire staff at the game's developer Firewalk Studios, who are now most likely looking for new jobs. The game had an estimated budget between $150 and $250 million, and thanks to my good friend ChatGPT, at the current $40 price tag Concord costs, it would take about 3.75 million copies just to break even. Concord wasn't even able to do that. Instead, the game sold 25,000 copies, not even making back 1% of its inflated budget, which it's going to lose anyways because everyone that purchased that game is going to get a refund. It's even rumored that Concord's never-been-seen failure to launch was the reason why Sony increased the price of the PS5 by $90 USD in Japan. The developer Firewalk Studios was founded in 2018 by 3 ex-Bungie employees, with the one that surprised me the most being Elena Siegman, aka the woman singing in all of the Call of Duty zombie songs. No, seriously, I couldn't believe it either. Sony Interactive Entertainment had apparently been supporting them since its founding, and in 2021 it was announced that Sony was publishing the studio's first project, and it was described as a AAA multiplayer game for the PS5, with Sony outright purchasing them in April of 2023. Only 1 month after the purchase, and PlayStation held the 2023 showcase, which would be the first time that multiple games were introduced to the world. During that showcase, 3 of those games were science fiction shooters: Concord, a brand new IP, Helldivers 2, a direct sequel to a game that sold 4 million copies, and a new Marathon game, aka the sci-fi shooter series made by Bungie before they worked on Halo and Destiny. Helldivers was the only one of them that showed any sort of gameplay, and it ended up selling 12 million copies between its PS5 and PC release. At its all-time high, it had about 458,000 people playing on it on Steam at once, and that's not even counting how many people were playing on PS5. Marathon never released, and honestly, at this point, I don't think that it will after what's been going on with Bungie. But even without any sort of gameplay, there was still some intrigue to the trailer, and it was the first new entry in a series that hasn't seen one in 27 years. Combine that with the fact that Bungie is an incredibly well-established developer. Even if I didn't like Destiny 1, I can absolutely see why there are other people who do. So, right off the bat, Helldivers 2 and Marathon were able to get a lot of hype going behind them. But Concord not so much. It had to have the worst trailer, and not only the 3 games that we just talked about, but probably the worst trailer of the entire event. Seriously, this trailer was just 40 seconds of a logo, followed by a video of a dirty spaceship. Nobody was interested in this game, and how could they when they knew next to nothing about it? Let me read to you how the developers would talk about it on their own Steam page. Assemble your crew of free gunner space outlaws and team up online with friends for thrilling 5v5 PvP modes across the galaxy in Concord. Concord is a new team-based first-person shooter for PS5 and PC. Handpick your personal roster of free gunners from the crew of the North Star, a group of outlaws and adventurers working as guns for hire. I use ChatGPT to write out all of my video descriptions, so I know what the results of a lazy prompt look like, and that is a dead ringer for one. Concord is a 5v5 shooter that doesn't do much to differentiate itself from its competition, outside of being the Temu Guardians of the Galaxy and of course a $40 price tag. The hero shooter genre is one with a lot of competition, and say what you want about these games, but if you have a PC from 8 or 9 years ago, you could play something like Overwatch 2, Paladin, Smite, or even Team Fortress 2. All games that have been around for years at this point, with a large player base and plenty of content that's been added throughout the years. Oh, they all have something else in common too. They're all free. If you pre-ordered Concord, you would not only get access to the game's beta, but you would also get 5 codes that you could give to your friends so that way they could play with you. It's not uncommon for betas to come out before the game does, because it can both hype up the game and let developers spot bugs that you wouldn't have caught previously. The Halo 3 beta required you to own the game Crackdown in order to play, and there were people that actually went out and bought it as a $60 game just so that way they could play the beta, and it had over 800,000 people who played it. Halo Reach's beta had even more people playing, and it still required you to own a copy of Halo 3 ODST. However, some people did win invite codes to the beta. Concord wasn't even close to that. Its peak had a total of 2,338 people playing on Steam at its height. Not a good sign. It was clear that people weren't interested in Concord, and how could they be? The game was described as an Overwatch clone that played a lot slower and had a longer time to kill that ended up causing both teams to form a mob that would just roam the map looking for the other team. Once the game was fully released, the website PC Gamer gave it a 45 out of 100, with the main verdict being, "Concord feels out of touch and already out of time." It was pretty clear that a lot of people were playing with those invite codes, because the numbers would get even worse once the game came out on Steam. The full game that you had to pay money to play showed an all-time high player count of 697 players. That's insane! People on launch week reported waiting 7 to 8 minutes trying to get into a match, and again, this was just days after the game's release. And it's believed that the game only sold 25,000 copies worldwide. Now, don't think for a second that Concord's failure was due to a market that can't be broken into since all of the big names are already established, because at the same time that Concord launched, Valve's closed playtest for their new game Deadlock really started to pop off. Deadlock is a game that you can only play if you're invited into it, and it's exclusive to Steam. When I was researching, it had 104,000 players playing at that moment. Just over 2,000 people less than its all-time high. Deadlock's beta isn't more popular because it's free, since it's arguably easier to get your hands on a copy of Concord, and it's not from advertising either, because Deadlock doesn't even have a trailer yet. Hero shooters are just like Smash Bros if you're not playing them competitively. You see the roster, pick a guy that you like, you play as him, and if you really like the game, you try out a different one. I looked at the different characters in Deadlock, and it took me no time to find 4 of them that I liked the look of, and would likely try out if I got the game. Concord, not so much. In fact, not only did I not see a single character that I liked and said, "Oh, I would play as that guy," but instead, I saw these characters and thought that they looked like a group of friends got together one night and tried to outdo making the stupidest looking character in a co-op game on a Friday night. Seriously, what are these?
What kind of fucked up game is this?
Concord's character roster was meant to be diverse, but not in a fun character way, but a DEI sort of way. And that's because Firewalk Studios had a problem that was all the way at the top of the company. On July 23rd, the YouTuber SmashJT would write an article called "Inside Firewalk Studios, the studio destroyed by woke ideology." SmashJT spoke to a whistleblower where he was told things about the company. These are just some of the quotes. "Any employee that so much as attempts to say or convey anything that could be construed as expressing a right-leaning opinion is swiftly axed or blacklisted by HR. HR has openly voiced a desire to reduce the number of straight white men in the studio without fear of repercussions." Everyone that's seen the movie Office Space was able to look at the character Lumbergh and be able to say working for that guy would be a nightmare. Well, Firewalk Studio was able to make Lumbergh look like a pushover. The principal game designer, Lisa Brown, was described as having a disdain for guns, remember, in a game where everybody uses one, advocated for firing everybody that didn't get the jab, and is the reason why everyone at Firewalk Studios has to use pronouns. That's because Lisa's pronouns are, and I'm not making this up, I'm not exaggerating, the professor.
Seriously, you need to stop.
To my knowledge, Lisa does not have the qualifications needed to be a professor. Regardless of that, however, everybody had to use it, and if you didn't, you were the one that was in the wrong, and the one that got blacklisted from the industry. I haven't played Concord, like most people, but I don't need to know that it's just an Overwatch reskin with less characters, a longer time to kill, and slower movement. Oh, and it's going to be shut down, so there's no point anyways. My last video, Stop Killing Games Matters, focused on games getting shut down by developers and leaving them unplayable. While there isn't anything that's going to stop me from laughing at the downfall of Concord, I think that the way they're handling its shutdown is probably the best that I've ever seen, and the way it should be going forward. However, while many qualities of the experience resonated with players, we also recognize that other aspects of the game and our initial launch didn't land the way we'd intended. Therefore, at this time, we have decided to take the game offline beginning September 6th, 2024, and explore options, including those that will better reach our players. While we determine the best path ahead, Concord sales will cease immediately, and we will begin to offer a refund for all gamers who have purchased the game for PS5 or PC. Concord was a game made by people who hate video games for people that don't play video games. Concord was designed around being diverse and inclusive, but Helldivers 2, for as many problems as the game has right now, it was leaps and bounds more inclusive than Concord could have dreamed of. Every character in the game is covered head to toe with a cape and helmet on. You can't even change the color, so everyone's wearing a matching uniform. There were months that people, terminally online like myself, couldn't get away from Helldivers for a day because of how many people loved it in the community that played it. And back when hero shooters were relatively new, Battleborn and Lawbreakers were all considered failures, with Battleborn having a peak of 12,000 people playing and Lawbreakers only getting 7,500. Looking at the old Battleborn trailer, you can tell there was actually some effort put into the character designs. I never played the game, but I'm sure if I did, I would have at least picked out one guy that I liked. Concord never had a chance. While I'm sure that it had some developers that genuinely cared about it and wanted to make the best game that they possibly could, it was headed by people trying to see who could virtue signal the hardest. But what do I know? After Space Marine 2 and Sparkling Neo come out, I can't think of a single game that I'm hyped for, outside of a possible Hotel Dusk Switch remaster. The lolcow trading card game has just gotten a little more advanced. Not in its rules, but now adding in brand new lore for all your favorite cows and scribes, including yours truly. Adentum is a robotic scribe that spends all his time documenting all the lolcows of the digital and real world. Throughout many years of experience, this has prepared him for anything the lolcows may throw his way. Adentum is also a battle-hardened warrior that has many machinations at his disposal. Since he is the robot overlord, Adentum can construct more robots to do his bidding. The scribes have a powerful ally in this master of machines. The Acronian War is approaching, and Adentum is waiting. If you're interested in getting in on the action, or even want to test your luck by donning one of the Sonichu medallion shirts, check out my affiliate link down below.